welcome back to Spinning Iris. It's day 5 of Banned Book Month, which means it is time for Chapter 5 of Candide by Voltaire. Last we left our heroes, they were on their way to Lisbon, and a storm was brewing. Now let's find out what happens, shall we? You ready? Let's go. Chapter 5. Storm, Shipwreck, and Earthquake, and what happened to Dr. Pangloss, Candide, and James the Anabaptist. Half the passengers, expiring from the indescribable agony which the rolling of a ship inflicts on the nerves and humours of the body, shaken in different directions, were so weakened that they lacked even the strength to become alarmed at their danger. The other half were shrieking and praying. The sails were torn, the masts were broken, the hull was cracked open. Those who could work were doing so, but they were all at cross purposes because no one was in command. The Anabaptist was topside, helping a little to handle the ship. A frenzied sailor struck him violently and laid him out flat on the deck, but his own blow threw him off balance and he fell overboard, head first. He was caught on part of a broken mast and remained hanging there. The good James rushed to his assistance and helped him climb back on board, but in the course of his efforts he was thrown into the sea in full view of the sailor, who let him perish without deigning even to look at him. Candide came over and saw his benefactor reappear on the surface for a moment before sinking forever. He tried to leap into the sea after him. Pangloss the philosopher stopped him by proving to him that the Lisbon harbour was formed expressly for the Anabaptist to drown in. As he was proving this a priori, the ship split open and everyone perished except Pangloss, Candide, and the brutal sailor who had drowned the virtuous Anabaptist. The scoundrel easily swam to land, and Pangloss and Candide were carried ashore on a plank. When they had recovered a little, they walked toward Lisbon. They still had some money left, with which they hoped to save themselves from starvation, after having escaped from the storm. They had scarcely set foot in the city, mourning the death of their benefactor, when they felt the earth tremble beneath them. The sea boiled up in the harbour and smashed the vessels lying at anchor. Whirlwinds of flame and ashes covered the streets and squares, houses collapsed, roofs were thrown onto foundations, and the foundations crumbled. 30,000 inhabitants of all ages and both sexes were crushed beneath the ruins. The sailor whistled, swore, and said, "I'll get something out of this." "What can be the sufficient reason for this phenomenon?" said Pangloss. "This is the end of the world," cried Candide. The sailor immediately rushed into the midst of the wreckage, braved death to find money, found some, took it with him, got drunk, and after sobering up a little, bought the favours of the first willing girl he met in the ruins of the destroyed houses, amid the dead and dying. But Pangloss pulled him by the sleeve and said to him, "You're behaving badly, my friend. You're not respecting universal reason. You've chosen a bad time for this." "By the blood of Christ, I'm a sailor, and I was born in Batavia. I've walked on the crucifix 4 times during 4 stays in Japan. You've come to the right man with your universal reason." Candide had been wounded by several splinters of stone. He was lying in the street, covered with rubble. He said to Pangloss, "Alas, get me some wine and oil. I'm dying." "This earthquake is nothing new," replied Pangloss. "The town of Lima in America felt the same shocks last year. Same causes, same effects. There is surely a vein of sulphur running underground from Lima to Lisbon." "Nothing is more likely," said Candide. "But in the name of God, bring me some oil and wine." "What do you mean likely?" retorted the philosopher. "I maintain that the fact is demonstrated." Candide lost consciousness, and Pangloss brought him a little water from a nearby fountain. The next day, having found a little food as they slipped through the ruins, they recovered some of their strength. Then they worked like the others to help those inhabitants who had escaped death. Some of the citizens they assisted gave them as good a dinner as was possible in such a disaster. The meal was sad, it is true. The hosts wet their bread with their tears, but Pangloss comforted them by assuring them that things could not have been otherwise. "For," he said, "all is for the best. For if there's a volcano in Lisbon, it couldn't be anywhere else. For it's impossible for things not to be where they are, for all is well." A little man in black, an officer of the Inquisition, who was sitting beside him, spoke up politely and said, "Apparently you don't believe in original sin, sir, for if all is for the best, there can be no fall or punishment." "I humbly beg your Excellency's pardon," replied Pangloss, still more politely, "for the fall of man and his curse were necessary components of the best of all possible worlds." "Then you don't believe in free will, sir?" said the officer. "Excuse me, your Excellency," said Pangloss, "but freedom can subsist with absolute necessity, for it was necessary that we be free, for after all, a determined will—" Pangloss was in the middle of his sentence when the officer nodded to his armed attendant, who was pouring him out a glass of port, or Porto wine. And that is the end of Chapter 5. You don't want to butt up against the Great Inquisition. This can only mean bad things for our heroes, and we'll find out in Chapter 6 tomorrow. I hope you'll join me. Thank you for watching. Take care. I'll see you then. Bye-bye.